Hi guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going over a few more JRPGs I played before the end of 2024. Here are those four for part 4. And we're starting with Card and Seal, played on PC and it took me 12 hours to finish. Card and Seal is one of those games that I knew would be niche, but at the same time I had a feeling it might appeal to me in terms of gameplay and overall ambience. 12 hours later, and yeah, it did. I think Card and Seal is a decent enough game, fairly straightforward in terms of its presentation and gameplay loop, but fun, because of its deceivingly deep card-based mechanics. Card and Seal takes place in a world where virtual reality games are all the rage. People all around the world play them, but because of their popularity, there are illicit underground dealings that occur within the virtual spaces. Neon is a hacker/contractor who works within these landscapes to prevent cybercrime at the root. On this particular job, he meets the avatar of Ansi, who is an employee at Helios, the developer of one such game where some shenanigans are taking place. She is investigating the issues herself when Neon comes in to assist. Both of them proceed through several MODs or mods from other deep dive games to eventually find the cause. At its core, Card and Seal is a roguelite deck builder. You proceed through trippy looking maps, take out enemies and build up your deck for the tougher bosses, though the deck itself resets for every new story event. The card-based battles take place on a grid similar to Mega Man Battle Network. You draw a hand every turn and cards serve multiple purposes. For instance, you can use the cards to move around the grid or stun an enemy before they use a heavy hitting ability. However, when on the offensive, it's all about combos and compounding different effects upon each other for massive damage, stacking effects in loops for one earth-shaking smackdown. There's a crazy amount of mechanics to get your head around in Card and Seal, maybe even a bit too many. For instance, the game will give you a tooltip to let you know what each mechanic does, but what often happens is that these are often dependent on another one, so what results is a massive list of stuff that you need to piece together. Not a problem if you're playing it in long spurts, but a pain if you've taken a bit of time away from it. Revisiting after my holiday was actually a struggle because I had to throw myself through fire trying to remember everything from before I left. It's not all about the cards either. You've got the addition of muses which activate when you fulfill certain conditions. These muses add yet more beneficial effects, so choosing the ones that work is yet another layer of depth to contend with. Like I say, there was a lot to get my head around here. But after about an hour, I was enjoying myself again, both for its gameplay and its overall feel. The game has that fever dream angle nailed down, and it's clearly aimed at the anime crowd with the tropes used like lap pillows and a fair amount of fan service. Though for me, I'd like it if the characters shut up once in a while. Just hearing Ansi's voice while I'm navigating menus got grating.
I'm sure we can put an end to this mod phenomena if we work together. Could we talk for just a little bit longer? Promise me you won't do anything rash, okay?
In addition, there are clear references to long-running franchises here like Digimon or the Mana series, and while they're not directly referenced, it won't take an egghead to join the dots together. All in all, Card and Seal is a great little game, not too expensive, not too long for a standard playthrough, and while it's not getting many awards from the mainstream crowd, it will sate the thirst of a specific group of player. But just before we carry on, I want to make you guys aware that YouTube memberships are now available if you want to support the channel. For £4 a month, a member can get some awesome benefits like these custom-made membership badges. Alternatively, you can support me on Patreon as well, where you can vote on future videos, get handwritten Christmas cards like this one, or partake in the quarterly giveaways. We've given away some really cool stuff this year, like the limited edition of Metaphor ReFantasio. Thank you for listening, and now back to the video. Next up is Mario and Luigi Brothership. It took me 36 hours to finish and was played on Switch, for obvious reasons since it is an exclusive to the platform. Now, I have no background with the Mario and Luigi RPG series. This is the first game within it that I've played. And yeah, I liked it. It's a good game, lots of charm, love the art style, the humour is on point for a Mario game, and it's an easy story to understand. Mario and Luigi are drawn into the land of Concordia, which has been broken up into separate islands. The adventure sees Mario and Luigi sail around the seas in search of these astray islands. Now, upon discovering one, they hop through the obstacles and events surrounding that island before eventually linking it to the main hub by lighting its resident lighthouse. The story proceeds with this as the main focus, reuniting the lands of Concordia, and it never really evolves beyond that. And that's fine, Mario games don't have deep and involved stories and they never will. And despite this one being an RPG, I wasn't expecting the story to be a highlight. It's clearly given more girth and import in Brothership, but it retains its simplicity throughout the 40 hours or so you'll be playing it. But even with its by-the-numbers narrative, Brothership did keep me engaged for most of the adventure. Like I'd say, it's got a really nice art style, it's got a grounding in familiarity in terms of the platforming roots of the Mario franchise, especially as you explore the islands, and the characters are fairly good in the majority. I was satisfied with the makeup of the game in terms of the overall flow of the adventure. There was always something new around the corner. And I do believe this to be Brothership's greatest strength: diversity. Every main island is unique. There are a host of inspired puzzles, you'll have to use the abilities of the brothers in different ways to proceed, and revisiting them is often encouraged to find additional items and secrets. That sense of diversity also applies to combat, a turn-based affair but split into an offensive and defensive phase. Mario and Luigi can use their own abilities for their turn, with import put on timing button presses for more damage, but those button presses are also used when defending against enemy attacks. The brothers also have a host of plugs they can use, which range from adding more damage while attacking to automatically using items when in a pinch, and you can combine them in ways to get special benefits too. The actual combat itself is always growing and progressing. And while the game does start easily enough, it does spike in difficulty around the halfway point. Enemy attack patterns become more intricate and harder to read, they deal more damage, and the boss battles become quite challenging, which I think was a welcome change. It was a bit too easy till that point, so I'm glad it picked up the pace later on. In fact, pacing, I think, is the biggest issue with the game. Initially, the opening 5 hours are slow. Like, I didn't have any special abilities for a fair amount of time, just my basic jump and hammer attacks. There were instances in the adventure where it was quite clear the game was padding itself out. For instance, you'll seemingly complete a dungeon, but then a random event will occur splitting the brothers up, or you'll need to get another switch to operate a lift because the one you've used suddenly doesn't work anymore. You'll often be barred off from doing other stuff until you proceed the story to a particular point, and some of the dialogue does go on a bit too frequently for my tastes. And staying in a similar line of thinking, my biggest issue in regards to pacing comes in combat itself. While the turn-based gameplay is fun and it's constantly evolving, the drawn-out animation started to wear thin by the end. It was the same issue I had with Sea of Stars, where your most effective abilities were locked behind 15 to 30 second sequences, and I did become a bit bored of it near the end. Like I say, it's about a 40-hour experience on average, so you'll be doing a fair amount of fighting. Even so, I do like Brothership. It's definitely not the best game I played in 2024, but it is a highlight in its own way. A game that combines the platforming pedigree of Mario as a franchise with a decently realised turn-based approach, all bundled together with comfortable and vibrant presentation. It's worth playing if you get the time. The third game I played was the Dragon Quest III HD 2D remake, played on Switch, and it took me 29 hours to finish. Absolutely excellent, and pretty much most of what I wanted from this remake. I have no history of the original, but I did play the Switch port of Dragon Quest I earlier this year, and deduced that the original Dragon Quest III might have had a similar structure to that game in terms of its more hands-off approach, something which I confirmed with David Vince himself, who is pretty much a walking encyclopedia on Dragon Quest. In the same breath, he also said to me that this game stuck to its roots. Outside of a few additions to the story, the new coat of paint and the quality of life improvements, Dragon Quest III HD 2D embraced its identity. You get an opening scene with the king, and then you set off on your destined journey to defeat the Archfiend. The story never really deviates from that, though to say it's a bad story wouldn't be right. It's bare bones and direct, but it's still pretty good, and it's even more intriguing when you consider its position in the original trilogy, not to mention its tenuous connections to Dragon Quest XI. I had to watch the final scene of Dragon Quest XI again after I finished this game to just confirm something for myself. It was very cool. That final scene in 11 has now taken on a completely different meaning for me. I'd recommend you check it out. Other than that though, you go and do whatever you want in this surprisingly vast world. Ransack houses, steal clothes from wardrobes, you know, hero things. The game embodies that feeling of adventure, one of those cozy RPG excursions of yesteryear that doesn't try to reinvent the wheel. You have your objective throughout, sure, but you're often dropping into a diverse collection of towns around the continent to sort out their problems, which in turn contributes to your main goal. In addition, you've got plenty of optional areas and events to find, and they're generally well worth seeking out. Seeds for permanent stat increases, a host of friendly monsters to use in the awesome Monster Arena side game, and of course, loot. Repairing the Sword of Kings for the first time or finding the hero shield in an optional dungeon just adds to the magic of the game, and it's so engrossing you get lost in the charm and thrill of the unknown. It helps as well that it looks brilliant in the HD 2D style, very well realised world all said and done. This is what I appreciate about Dragon Quest, or at least the ones I've played so far. They allow player agency at pretty much every turn. Very few times are you put on rails till you complete a certain objective. No fanfare, no bloated dialogue. Once you've done what you need to do, you move on immediately to the next task. In fact, player agency and freedom is what defines the experience in Dragon Quest III, as it's not just exploring the world that has a lot of importance. Unlike the original Dragon Quest where the hero travels alone, in this adventure you're travelling with up to 3 companions. You have the hero himself, and then each of his party members fulfills a role chosen by yourself, like warriors, priests and mages. But what's really cool about the system is that these units can eventually change their jobs when they reach level 20. The reset is going to push them back to level 1, but here's the thing, they still retain all of the spells they learned during their previous vocation, plus their stats don't fall back to the scale of a level 1 adventurer, instead they only half. In other words, it's actually beneficial to reset your job at least once to reap higher stat bonuses in the long run, along with added flexibility in terms of the abilities and spells you can use. For instance, I leveled my mage to the point that they had learnt every spell available, something you can easily tell as there won't be any blank spots left on your spell list, and from there I then reset them into the sage so that I could use healing spells, the sage itself only available via a special item found exploring the world. The priest in my party was reset to a warrior to take on a sort of paladin role, and in addition it's not just the classes that have importance, the personality of the unit is also given a highlight as it defines the stat growth of that character. For example, the genius personality works best with the mage, as it leads to higher growth of wisdom and mana points, while the bodybuilder is perfect for a warrior as it grants higher strength and stamina growth. But the beauty of the system is that even if you're not optimal and you choose to use a personality that doesn't fit a job, the flexibility offered via the spells and abilities is more than enough to see you through anyway. As a result, it's not overly punishing, but can be so rewarding at the same time. The ability to mold my party in the way I want is something I adore about RPGs, and any game that does it well gets a thumbs up from me, whether it's Bravely Default 2, Octopath Traveler 2, or indeed Dragon Quest III HD 2D. And as such, the turn-based gameplay is great. Simple, to the point, a bit slow at the base speed I'll say, thankfully there is an option to speed it up. Very satisfying, and does become quite challenging in the later stages, well, unless you're like me and chose to farm liquid metal slimes before taking out the bosses. For me, the only thing I didn't enjoy about the combat were the status ailments. You see, characters have 2 accessory slots of their own, and these accessories in some cases help you resist ailments. That's the key word though, they help. They don't actually make you immune. So in the later stages, despite mine prioritising equipment that averted instant death abilities, I was still getting thwacked on several occasions. Me personally, I prefer an accessory that just gives straight up immunity rather than a percentage based chance, and I dare say there were a few in the world that I never found. The other 2 issues, one is that the random encounter rate is a bit too high for me, something that was thankfully curtailed via Holy Waters or Holy Protection Spam when exploring lower level areas, and the performance on the Switch wasn't the best, as you'd probably expect by now. If I wasn't on holiday in November, I'd be purchasing it for PC without question. All in all though, Dragon Quest III HD 2D is a highlight of 2024 for me, an absolutely excellent game that appeals to my taste right down to the letter. It's a modern iteration of a classic, but they made sure that what made the original so good remains in this one, practically untouched. A must-buy of 2024. The 4th and final game I played was an indie title called Frameland, a binary tale played on PC, and it took me 8 hours to finish. Now, I was offered a code for this game from the developers themselves, you can call it a perk of the role, but in the same breath, I get offered a lot of codes, as in at least one a day, and because of that I have to be selective with which games I end up playing for two reasons. One, I don't have the time to play every single game under the sun, I think that's pretty obvious, and two, I don't really want to play it if I don't think it's good enough, because let's face it, we all want to play the games that appeal to our tastes. So in short, the way I sift through this stuff is I look at a trailer first and then I check the reviews. If both of those show promise, I give it a go. And Frameland: A Binary Tale was one such game. All in all, I'm very happy that I ended up giving it a shot too. It's been developed by a German team, a small one, as you might expect, but they've done a really good job here all said and done. For the 8-hour runtime, I was completely engaged with everything that was going on. Frameland shows that if you have good writing and pacing, you do not need to stretch your game to the hundreds of hours. As long as you are concise and maintain your focus on what your game's message is, you can create something great in a period that respects the player's time. That is the core of Frameland, and I'll say now, for its price of £12, I definitely recommend it to any JRPG fan. The story is centered around the journey of Ryu, who finds himself in an unknown frozen tundra. In an effort to find his way home, he joins up with two others who share a common goal of sorts. Now the reason I'm keeping it vague here is because the story of Frameland was easily the highlight of the game for me, and as such I don't want to spoil it, even the early stages. Frameland presents something profound and relatable, not perfect by any means, but it really nails all of the big developments. I personally would have been happy if it was say an hour or two longer to expand on some of the character backstories, but overall, really impressed with what they came up with here. The gameplay, it's nothing you haven't seen before if you're a turn-based fan. Time-based mechanics to maximise damage and guard yourself, a decent amount of skills to work with, and good progression in terms of levelling and equipment. There's not much more to say on it. It's not a difficult game either. Even if you're not adept at timing your button presses, like me, I'm terrible at these types of games, you'll be completely fine if you're familiar with turn-based RPGs. Finally, there's a fair amount of side content too, especially after its recent update. You get some more challenging content, ultimate weapons and armour, and some extra areas to check out. In truth though, it's a fairly linear experience until the final stretch, but I was fine with that. And that's because I felt that Frameland respected my time. No bells, no whistles, just a game with a lot of care and passion put into it, and I'll take that any day of the week. I recommend it for its low asking price. It's a perfect palate cleanser in between the more lengthy adventures you'll be experiencing in early 2025. Give it a go if you get the chance. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe for more JRPG content, and consider joining my Patreon if you're interested. Peace.